You've just landed Inside LaunchStreet, the innovation podcast, where we interview top innovators out there shaking things up so you can innovate and differentiate and get further, faster in this crazy, cluttered world. And now, innovation thought leader and your super fly host, Tamara Kleinberg.
What's up, LaunchStreeters? Tamara here, your host, and that person that has a horrible time remembering names, but will remember some obscure detail that you told me about your life. I know, it's weird. All right, let's dig into this. Early adopters. They're the ones that are willing to try your new-to-the-world idea, and if they like it, they spread it into their communities like wildfire. They are so important to innovation. And no one knows this better than Apu Mody, CEO of Lenny and Larry's. Have you had one of their high-protein, delicious cookies? They're so good. So on Inside LaunchStreet, I talked to Apu about early adopters, why success isn't an overnight phenomenon, and how you need to train your customer or your client when you have a breakthrough product or service. He also shares something that I think is actually killing innovation at big companies, and he does too. It's the I'm not the consumer mindset, the I have to go find the consumers to talk to them mindset. It will make more sense when you hear him talk about it. Okay, go get your protein cookies and let's do this. Well, this is an exciting one, partially because as awkward as this sounds, I eat his cookies. So Apu, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to hear you're a fan.
I am a fan. As I was telling you offline, I love the muscle muffins. We'll have to get into that. So since you're new to us, what's the one thing people would be surprised to learn about you?
Surprised to learn about me would probably be my first college job, which was selling books door to door. And I ended up doing that for a couple of summers. And so I guess I'm a door-to-door salesman.
Okay, so I have to know, did it work? At that time, door sales actually work?
Yeah, so I am dating myself, and so I'm sure door-to-door sales don't work very effectively now. Although I feel, I'm doing a similar job now, going retailer to retailer. But at that time, it worked brilliantly, and I ended up doing it for 2 summers. Recruited a bunch of people to go with me, and we all made more money than we expected to make in a summer job.
I have to imagine, though, that door-to-door sales probably primed you for what you're doing now, or gave you some skills, right? Or at least a comfort level with kind of reaching out to new people, making connections, getting no's.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. The no's was really a great learning experience, because we had a motto that, every no just got you closer to the yes. And so the power of persistence was embedded into our brains. And, it was very, very insightful also in just how to be innovative and creative and connecting with people. And eventually, obviously, convincing them that, what you were offering was of some value to them.
I think that's how my family bought their original Encyclopedia Britannica, was from a door-to-door salesman. So,
right. Yeah, well, I was one of them, and I appreciate the work that they go through.
That's fantastic. So let's leap forward. The reason we wanted to have you on the show was to talk about Lenny and Larry's cookies, which I love for a myriad of reasons, not just the flavor and the protein and all that, but also because I think it's an interesting disruptive baked good, which we'll get into. But for those LaunchStreeters out there who don't know, tell us the story about how Lenny and Larry's came to be and kind of what it is first, and then we'll dig in.
Yeah, so I like a lot of, fantastic companies or products or brands, this was born out of a need that the two founders had. So there were actually 2 guys, not Lenny and Larry, but Benny and Barry, who were, really, really into fitness. And this was almost, 20 plus years ago, really into fitness and on a very strict diet as a result of that. So, chicken breast, eggs, and yogurt. And that was kind of the selection you had, back then. And they kept thinking, we've got sweet tooth, and we need to kind of, feed that part of our craving as well, and not just be, not adhere to this strict diet. And so they created brownies and muffins and cookies with protein, and said, why can't those things be healthier and allow us to still stay on our diet, stay, fitness oriented, but yet enjoy the things that we love to eat. And so that was the genesis of the idea. And, it comes from kind of personal need. And then they realized that, if they made them, friends were asking for them, other, fitness enthusiasts, bodybuilders, et cetera, kept going, wow, like, why hasn't anyone thought of that? And I think some of the greatest ideas come from, that simple, let's just make it for ourselves. We have a need, and then let's figure out if other people have that same need.
When they first started it, did people just love it out of the gate? Like, how did the company, right, go from, because I totally get it. So I don't know if I'd call it a guilty pleasure. I'm a CrossFit addict. So I'm always looking for stuff with more protein, which is how I came across the cookies too. But, kind of what was the initial reaction, and how did the company then grow from there?
Yeah. So the initial reaction was, I'd say, tepid at best, right? This was Barry talks about this, still as, the longest overnight success, because it was, the door-to-door sales, right? I mean, they were literally going door to door, trying to knock on retailers. And at that time, there was no, huge protein set like we see now, not lots of bars and, protein powders and all of that. And so it was a real struggle, right? People scratching their heads going, wait a minute, why have you done this? Who's going to, who
would buy this? Yeah.
Yeah. And so they sold to local coffee chains, local, retailers, and they went about it for about 7 years, and actually ended up selling the business to another entrepreneur who, bought the business, bought a bakery to make the products, and again, kept going at it. And Barry Turner, who was one of the founders, had sort of an itching feeling about 3 years after selling, and he asked Don to come back into the business and buy back his portion of the business. And he felt like he was onto something, but just hadn't really given it enough of a go. And as things happen, Whole Foods started becoming much more prominent. That was where a lot of people were going to find and discover early young brands. And so we were fortunate that we had the products in Whole Foods, where a lot of, consumers started to discover it, but it was, again, a slow process. And then one of the best things I think in the company's history happened is the bakery we owned burned down.
Oh.
And I say that because in many ways it was a fortuitous turn, because when you have your own bakery, you're really concerned about keeping it absolutely full. And so you get distracted with, baking other people's products and taking anything you can just to keep, the cash flow.
Oh.
And so when they got forced to, figure out what to do now, they decided, look, let's focus on these, couple of products we've made with our brand, and let's really just concentrate there. And we'll find, there's plenty of other bakeries. We can find someone else who can bake our products for us. And that really forced, them to get, very much focused. And then they started getting distribution into places like GNC, Vitamin Shop, a lot of the health and fitness kind of focused retailers. And then eventually, it made its way into what I would call kind of mainstream retailers. And it just took off. And, a lot of what was happening in the background was people getting obviously much more focused on healthy eating, much more aware of sort of the benefits of eating more protein. And, all of that really played into kind of the tailwinds that they enjoyed. And they discovered they had a really unique product format, obviously, in a cookie that stood out amongst a sea of, rectangular bars everywhere in the store.
So you've said a couple things in there that I want to dig into, because they're so, I think, important to when you've got a product like like this, right? Like Lenny and Larry's, where it's bucking the kind of standard, the obvious in the category. One is, first of all, I'm so glad you mentioned not like the longest overnight success, because I do think that, we don't hear about these things until they're successful. And then we say, oh my gosh, this came from nowhere. When
Right.
It's been around for 20 years, we just didn't know about it because it had all these hurdles, right, to get to us along the way. But you said something else about kind of early adopters and people trying stuff and Whole Foods being a part of that. How important do you think that early adopters and those people who are in those more niche kind of arenas, like, who are bodybuilders or CrossFit addicts or whatever, are important to getting products like this out there?
I mean, absolutely crucial, right? Absolutely crucial, because I think, one is those early adopters, especially in food and beverage, really tend to do their research, right? They are either, obsessed or close to obsessed with their health in ways that most of us really aren't, right? And most of us, are sort of, look, I usually just make mental trade-offs, right? If I'm going to have a pizza for dinner, I'm going to have a salad for lunch. And it's my own, mental balance sheet. But, those who are really into it, like you said, you were into CrossFit, I'm sure, you're very, very conscious of, what am I going to have?
Oh, yes.
Is it the right, is it the right?
I have to hit my macros.
Carbs and proteins and macros and all that. And so those people are great because, one, they're really into it, but two, they actually end up being, really strong influencers, right? And especially today where you've got, fragmented media, social media, all of that, they're the credible sources, right? So it used to be the credible sources were, frankly, 30-second commercials that I watched on, network television. And now the credible sources are, people who are really into it and their passion shows, comes through on social media or other venues. And so the 3-second, I think of it as the 3-second commercial, because eventually what I really want is just give me the 3-second headline. I need something that, I feel is going to be healthier for me, but I need someone else to help me, validate that. Right. And the validators now are no longer the brands with the 30-second commercials. The validators are, these people who have, early adopters who have these platforms where they basically, talk about products they love in these 3-second snippets.
It's interesting that you say that. So I took the birthday cookie to the gym with me. And because I just wondered if anyone heard of it. And then I gave everybody a bite because I was like, oh, you should totally try it. They're really good. And then I think within like 48 hours, I got, 3 texts of like, I went and found these at the store. I went and bought them online. And I was like, wow, what you're saying is totally, I hadn't really thought about it. I was just doing a little market research on my own. But it's totally true. Like if you can get those early adopters to buy into your idea, they'll do the work for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And there, and the thing is, again, because, Barry and Penny originally were the, real early adopters, right? I mean, they were they were that audience. They were making it for themselves. They didn't, do a bunch of market research. They didn't try to map a market and go, hey, there's a whole, I mean, all of the things that I got, fortunately or unfortunately trained to do at large companies. They just said, we know we have this problem and we're going to solve our own problem. And then we'll figure out if other people have the same problem.
Sometimes the best ideas come from that, though, don't they? It's just your own personal frustration.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, and the beauty of these early adopters is, again, not only that talk about it, but, there's also a real, the shift of credibility is unbelievable to me in the, in kind of the consumer and food space now. Again, it used to be we trusted brands to tell us the truth. And that, that turned out to not be such a great idea. Right. Then we had trusted experts, right? And you'd see them on, Good Morning America, you'd see them in all these places, or you'd read the latest, USDA report or the latest from some physician. And then, it became incredibly confusing because it was all conflicting. And so now the experts are, people you either like, know, trust in some regard, even if you know them intimately or know them indirectly, right? It was tell a friend. And what you said is exactly right. I mean, once you start, you go, hey, let me go tell somebody, because I always want to tell people about new products or new things I've discovered. I love sort of sharing that, and I love hearing it from others. And that's the easiest, still the easiest way to kind of get insight and information. Now it's just become easier to do that through, all of the media options we have.
Yeah, I mean, the flow of information is so fast these days. It's absolutely incredible. I want to go back to what you said about, in a kind of a sea of bars and baked goods. And I want to get from your perspective what it's like being kind of the disruptor in a category that is, first of all, so crowded. I mean, there are entire sections of a grocery store dedicated to, quote unquote, baked goods. I mean, really, it's aisles of it, right? So,
yeah,
and a lot of it is bars and like kind of very standard stuff. And here you are, this kind of like, high protein cookie. How do you view that? How does that? I'm not even sure how to ask the question, because it's kind of a big one. But like, how do you come at that, given you are the odd man out in a good way?
Well, it's in some ways it's not really simple, because we would walk into a store and the obvious question we get is, well, where should I put you?
Right. Which shelf space is so valuable.
Yeah. Do you belong with, cookies? Do you belong with the nutrition bars? And my answer is usually we belong with both. So you should actually put us in both parts of the store. And, that usually doesn't get a lot of immediate embracing of that idea. But, what we find is context matters, right? And right now, the best context for us is, I think we're just a much better alternative to, what people are eating as nutrition bars or protein bars, because to me, that's where, the most immediate source of frustration is. And the source of frustration, amongst those products that we hear often from our fans is, man, I just get tired of those bars. They don't taste that great. And there's kind of a limited number of times I can have that. This tastes like a cookie. It tastes great. And I never thought I'd be eating cookies while I was, watching macros or watching nutrition. And I still get all the nutritional benefits I would have gotten from any of those other products. And so that context today, is our winning context. Now we have you may not have seen it. We have a smaller size, kind of a half size cookie. And what we're finding is that actually works great when we put it in, the cookie aisle, because it's a more, it's a smaller snack. It goes great into a lunchbox. It goes great, in a purse. It's under 200 calories. So it's just, it's less protein, but it's not, but it's still equally sort of satisfying. And the context for that changed partly because we really realized that, the way consumers were, using that product was a little different than the way they were using the larger cookie. And so context in the store makes such a big difference, though, for brands. But, that was one of the challenges we had early on, but it's still a challenge is, where in the store do you belong? And, who do you actually go talk to as a result of, what you're hearing from consumers?
And I think actually, I mean, you guys have obviously figured it out, but I mean, that's for launch readers out there listening, that's actually kind of a big hurdle, because shelf space is highly valuable and they don't want to give it up to new products if they think you're not going to turn volume, right? So,
that's right.
And I remember that from I used to do a lot of work in new product development, and we worked with one of the kind of original fruit press smoothie things. And it was, nobody had any idea where to put it. We had to create our own, end cap just to find new space, because they wouldn't put it anywhere. So you say it as if it's not a big deal, but really that's a huge hurdle in itself.
It is a huge hurdle, right? And but the thing is, all right, we do quite a bit of business just on our own retail site. And, so as a result, we're able to kind of hear from our own, from our buyers, where they're, what they're looking for, what they're actually, look, with any food product, you're replacing something to, to eat this, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's not an incremental purchase by any means. And so, we had a lot of time to actually listen and learn from consumers. What were you replacing it with? What are you, using it instead of? And that really then arms you with a lot better information to go walk into kind of a buyer at a retail store and say, look, this is what we hear from our consumers. They've been shopping on our website for 5 years. We've got a lot of information, a lot of data. We, pass new products through to them. We get early information on concepts that we have. And here's what they're telling us.
That's such a great approach for launch readers out there listening, to get a little bit of customer validation and feedback first before trying to sell it to the retailers. That's so great. What other either roadblocks or points of resistance have you hit along the journey? Maybe they surprised you even, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, so I mean, look, along the journey, I mean, the beauty of this, and I think a real valuable lesson is, you don't have to start with the perfect product. You start with a product and you make changes as you go, as people give you feedback and you're open to that feedback. And I think when I look back at sort of the history of what these guys built, that was super evident. And so I'll give you a great example. Yeah. So when we started with the product, with the cookie, it was 16 grams of, whey protein. And we eventually shifted because we heard from people that whey certainly had enough people that, didn't react well to whey, didn't react well to kind of, their bodies handling whey. And so we switched to soy. And then, we eventually heard enough about soy. And so then we switched to, where we are today, which is, plant-based proteins entirely. And so, while we never set out to say we were going to go, offer a product that was vegan friendly, it just turned out that way. And, it was a whole journey as we heard from our consumers that, look, you got to change the product or you got to make this adjustment. And, we stayed very open to listening to that and making adjustment. I mean, at some point you want to deliver a product experience that, consumers love. And there's, a lot that can change over time. And, if you assume that you're going to, find the perfect product right from the get-go and never have to change it, I think you're, likely in for some surprises.
I have a business colleague who talks about in his business, it's always the 80% rule. As long as it's 80%, right, then you're willing to launch it, because you spend so much time on that final 20%. And that's what actually kind of turns you into analysis paralysis, is that extra, or perfectionist is that 20%. I want to ask you this question because it kind of links to another podcast interview I just did with an innovation expert. And we were talking about how when you trust a company and they do something that you really like solve a need for you, like I would really like some protein that doesn't taste like cardboard in my mouth, that you're willing to put up with things that maybe aren't perfect. Or you're a little bit more willing to go along for the ride with them in kind of a little bit of the ups and downs. Have you found that with Lenny and Larry's, that, because you serve such a specific problem and like your branding is great, the relationship with the customers is great, that they're really more willing to be with you? We talk a lot about customers being so just not loyal anymore, but I'm kind of not hearing that with what you're saying.
Yeah, look, I mean, we definitely have, fans who stay loyal and they're willing to accept some changes. They're also very vocal. The flip side is they're also incredibly vocal when you make a change that they
don't like.
they don't like, right? And so, so we hear that as well. So look, I'll give you, a good example. So, all of that protein change, I don't think had any real, major impact as we went from whey to soy, because we kept all the taste profiles. But, we've often heard about sugar and, how do you deal with, the sugar content? Fundamentally, it's a cookie. And so, how do you bake a cookie at home? You bake it with, flour, milk, eggs, and sugar. And so we're always trying to, lower the amount of sugar in the product while still keeping the taste. And we've also, talked a lot about this to kind of our fan base that, we don't believe in any artificial sweeteners whatsoever. High fructose corn syrup, any of that. And we also don't believe in sugar alcohols, right? We don't think those are great for your body. And most protein bars use that as their, so they can say, no sugar, but yet it's filled with sugar alcohols, which are, again, just,
well, that's good to know.
Great to consume. So, when you taste a bar and it's really sweet, but it's got zero sugar, you
right.
have to ask yourself how they did that. And, ultimately the body's obviously better suited to process, pure sugar, because that's what we've grown accustomed to processing rather than, processing sugar alcohol. So, that's a piece of feedback we will say to everybody, look, we're always working on it. And so, we're always lowering it. We may not tell you all the time we're lowering it, because oftentimes, drawing attention to the fact that you're lowering sugar, people go, I don't want a low sugar product either, because that may not taste great. So that's one where, we get the feedback. We're sort of listening to the feedback. We're always looking for, ingredients that can meet that need without, again, violating our principles of, no artificial and no sugar alcohols. And that's, a constant dialogue and a constant, conversation you're having. Non-GMO became something that we heard from our fans, right? Why, can you make all your, ingredients non-GMO? So, we started working on doing exactly that, right? We started asking question to our suppliers, is this a non-GMO ingredient? Because, we're going to move our entire cookie to being non-GMO.
I want to ask you a question about something that you've referenced now several times that I think is so important to innovation and to building a brand, really. And that's this kind of what you keep saying around constant dialogue with the fans and with the customers. Because I think that oftentimes the mistake that brands and businesses make is they turn customer feedback into this point in time exercise. And I know that because I used to get hired for it, and they'd spend a lot of money to do focus groups and ethnographies and, fill in the blank. And then it was like the door shut, right? They would take that information and then go internally, and the customer dialogue stopped. And, you've talked about it, and I consistently hear it from successful businesses that customer, it's a conversation, not a point in time. So how do you think about that, and how do you actually operationalize that so that you're constantly getting that feedback? And I'd love to just put a little carve out in there for our LaunchStreet listeners to know that, social media doesn't necessarily mean they're listening. So, it's one of those things where it seems like they're having a dialogue, but it's someone just making sure they responded to you, but it's not actually getting inside to the people making decisions. So all that is to ask you, Apu, how do you operationalize that constant dialogue you keep talking about?
Yeah, so I would say there's two really important components of it. And one is, this may sound a little odd, but, the thing that was profound for me coming into kind of Lenny and Larry's is you've got an employee base that are literally, rabid fans of the brand and the product. And, it sounds like, well, geez, shouldn't that always be the case? I can tell you, there's lots of times where, you're hiring, people who this is a point in time for them, or this is an interesting, career move or whatever it is. One of the things that I found when I got here was literally everybody here is a raving lunatic fan of the brand.
Wow, that's incredible.
Now when we hire, whether it's, someone in our warehouse, someone in our customer service group, whatever, I mean, we literally ask that question, is this a product you could actually go sell? Right? Would you go sell this to your family and friends? And it's not that it's a requirement of the job, but I want to know, do you really believe what we're doing? Do you believe in the products we're making? Because if you don't, to me, that's always been fundamental is, I had sort of this thing I called the kids rule, right? If I didn't work on products that I would feel great about giving to my own kids, then, I probably shouldn't go work on that. Right. And it's simple, but, oftentimes it's easy to kind of get swayed. Well, I got a promotion, or I got this, or I got that. So our employees are, these super fans. And so they want, everything we do here, we're a small team. And so anytime we have a new idea or a new concept, we literally, go quickly bake it up, and we have our employees taste it, right? And go, what do you think? Like, is this something, that makes sense for us? Is this something you would eat? Does it taste great? All of those questions, because that's frankly, the first point of truth for me is, I've got all these fans. Why don't I, why not really use that? And then the second is, we have a whole kind of army of brand ambassadors. And so these are people that, have reached out to us. They love talking about the product, and they frankly, they just love the brand, and they are our super fans. And so we, often give them, T-shirts, discounts, whatever, to, make sure we nurture that relationship. But nurturing that relationship is two ways. They also constantly give us feedback. And so when I have questions, I can literally I can, type out an email, or I can send out, a survey to a group of that ambassador, the ambassadors, and I get honest feedback. I mean, they don't hold anything back, because they're not worried about, am I really, what am I going to get out of this? They know I'm going to, ask them questions. I'm going to have new flavors that they get to try first, and they let me know, this is great, this is terrible, this doesn't work. And so, the beauty of this, and this is unique, is the employee piece, because I don't think I've ever been, in a company where I've had, everyone around me just constantly eating the product, loves the product, lives, parts of the lifestyle, really tries to, be healthy. And so gives you honest opinions about all of our products. And then you've got ambassadors that we've kind of nurtured over a course of 5 or 7 years, where, they really love the connection they have, but they also give us feedback on what's going well, what's not going well.
It's funny. I think we often forget that our own employees are people, they're out there, they're customers of us and other stuff too. So why wouldn't we ask them? And even better that they're raving fans, right? And they know the business, but they're out there in the world shopping and eating, and why wouldn't we ask them? I mean, it's almost when you said that, I was like, oh my God, of course. Like, why wouldn't you?
But I don't know. I used to hear this often, that, as I grew up sort of then, in the marketing function at some different companies, and I would always hear people say, but remember, we're not the consumer.
Right.
And it was like, it struck me as bizarre, right? Like, why do you assume we're not the consumer? And if we're not, let's go find some people who are, because, we should have that mindset all around us every single day. So, God forbid I have someone who's fantastic at product development, but doesn't like our products, right? Like that sounds so odd. And yet, that's a mantra people use all the time. Remember, we're not our consumers.
Yeah.
And you go, no, I actually want us to be our consumers. I want us to be, everyone has that mindset that if I can't advocate for the product and I can't go sell it to my family and friends, then it's probably, there's something wrong.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. That's why I think it's so mind-blowing and obvious at the same time. And, and I think that's why, consumer research becomes this point in time exercise, because we somehow decided when we walk through the doors of our office that we're not a person, like we're not the consumer. We don't. Yeah. And of course you should use the brand that you work on. Otherwise, how do you understand it?
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
And how do you understand the experience others are having with it, the interactions others are having with it, and have empathy for that.
Right. And not to negate, to your point, asking other people as well. You don't want to keep it only within your four walls, because you can get bogged down with almost too much information too, because you know too much.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, no, you're right. Remember, we're not the consumer. That's what I used to hear in the back of the room of the focus groups all the time. Well, we're not the consumer, so we need to listen, which is, I want you to listen, but I also don't want to do focus groups, but that's a different conversation.
Yeah, that's a whole.
Yeah, it's a whole. I have a whole soapbox around why those are ridiculous. But we'll go there another time. I would love to know where you're headed. What's your vision for Lenny and Larry's moving forward?
Look, so I think that, we're clearly on something, and I think the beauty of what we've started with is, if I really kind of start with two pillars. One is, clean plant-based ingredients, and that's really what our fans kind of and consumers expect from us now as a brand. Yet in absolutely fun, delicious bakery products. If you take kind of that, those two kind of guidelines, if you will, for us, and it has to be absolutely delicious, right? So my one thing is, look, we sell food products, and food fundamentally is not about function; it's about taste.
Yeah,
and that will never change, right? There will be moments in time or some occasion where all you care about is function, right? But really, most fundamentally, people care about taste, and so plant-based ingredients and bakery fresh products that deliver absolutely yummy products. And so we start with that, and we go, look, there is so much we can go into, so many new products we can make, and there's a lot of great kind of exciting new ideas that are bubbling up and soon to be kind of on the store shelves.
So I want to dig into one thing you just said here, which is, about kind of having exponential growth. What do you think have been those tipping point moments that have helped the company kind of move to the next level? I know you mentioned in the beginning a little bit about Whole Foods, and we've talked about kind of health and macro eating and kind of looking at your protein and all that kind of becoming bigger. But when you look at the business, what over the time has really been like, all right, this has helped us get to the next level?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of pieces of it. One is the cookie really became the star. So while we have the brownies and the muffins, it became clear the cookie was the one that was going to accelerate the first and the fastest.
So you had all of those the whole time.
We had all of
that.
those.
Okay.
And I think there was a point in time where the focus became, let's just really get the cookie out there because this thing is moving. And I think that initial focus really helped because, you can walk in and be distracted. Now I've got 20 items to sell you. Which one do you want?
Right.
And, I'll sell you anything that I have type of thing. So focusing and realizing that the cookie initially was going to be the real star off the bat. And so that created focus. So then, we could develop new flavors. We had a wide assortment that we needed to be in retail. Second was, a couple of, I would say, retail partnerships, really, because they were, early adopters of the brand. They kind of put their necks out on the line and really took a chance on the brand, and that helped, tremendously. And then the third was, they made the Don and Barry made this kind of, aha change, which seemed risky at the time. We were in a kind of a clear cellophane package. And we went to what's our current package, and it did two things. One is the brand just made a bigger impact on shelf, but it also extended our shelf life from, 3 months to kind of, 12 months. And then you could go national. You weren't just limited to, local retailers. And so the combination of those three things, focus, some real early adopter retailers that I say would took a risk and made big bets on us. And then this, changing of the packaging made a huge impact. And that's when, growth really in the last couple of years has just been, like you said, exponential.
So I just want to pause for a second. So for LaunchStreeters, these three are so important. And I'm going to go back to what Apu said in the beginning about of these three, of focusing on the cookie. I think that's a massive challenge that we all have. And I know I'm guilty of it, of like, here are my 3 ways that I could help you innovate. And people are like, I don't know where to focus. So that idea of, hey, what's your cookie? What are you focusing on? I think is so important. And I will tell you this, being newer to to you. I knew about the other stuff after I started digging, but it was because of the cookie that I came into it as a customer.
Right.
So I could totally see where you're coming from. It's too many options actually works against you, even though you think, oh, I should have a plethora of choices for customers so they can have what they want. You gotta start somewhere.
Exactly. You have to have your way in. And then, is there room for our, muffin and our brownies and all that? Absolutely. Right now, as people discover the cookie, there's great other options to offer them. But at first, you have to have, something that's going to be, the driving force and that you're going to put, all your energy and time behind.
And I would think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but cookie sounds tasty no matter what. Where muffin, the other stuff, like you have to still convince me that it tastes good. But
right.
Simply because it's a cookie, I go in with the assumption that, oh my God, it's got all this protein, and obviously it tastes good. It's a cookie.
Exactly. Who doesn't love eating cookies?
What? Before I get to the last question, where would you like people to go to learn more and connect?
So, you can, absolutely, obviously go onto our website. You can go onto my LinkedIn and, find me there. I think there's probably not too many Apu Modys on LinkedIn. And those are probably the best places to find out more and learn more. And then we're obviously on every social media platform, Instagram, Facebook, all of that, and you'll learn a lot more about the company and how we connect with our ambassadors and with our fans.
And I would just say to launch leaders out there listening, go online, go to Lenny and Larry's and get the cookies because they really are delicious. So that's just to go buy them and at least try them. And then if you don't like them, fine, but at least try it.
Try. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm all about the try. So my last question for you is, what's one piece of advice you have for launch leaders out there that are looking to kind of drive that massive growth or get to that acceleration part of the curve like Lenny and Larry's has?
Yeah, I would say, be persistent, be focused, and, find a few both, fans to get real feedback from and retailers, one or two retail partners where you can really go deep and, build a strong relationship and a partnership with. Don't try to spread yourselves too thin.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that. I'll tell you, I have a few clients out there who, whether I'm actually engaged doing work with them or not, I know I can always pick up the phone and say, hey, what do you think about this? And those relationships have been invaluable to our organization in a way that I don't think we would have had success when we launched if we hadn't had those relationships, to your point about it's just a few. It's not everybody. Right. It's just a few key ones.
Yeah, exactly. That, we'll give you the honest opinions and won't hold back, but we'll also be, huge supporters and give you great ideas to accelerate.
All right, last question. What's your favorite product and flavor?
So my favorite product about to come out, actually, so I've switched.
Oh.
Or I switched like literally month. But right now, my running favorite product is our new apple pie cookie, which is actually set to get out this month.
Oh my gosh, that sounds delicious.
It's going to be fantastic. I'll make sure you get some so you can try it.
I'll be all over it, believe me. I'll take it to the gym, give everybody a bite.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Apu, thank you so much. This has been
thanks very much.
Fantastic.
Really enjoyed it. Absolutely. Thanks very much.
Don't go yet. Speaking of including your customers in on the journey, as Apu talked about, I hope you'll take a second and pop over to GoToLaunchStreet.com, GOTO LaunchStreet.com, and check out our new website. There are tons of resources, blogs, vlogs, and the ability to discover your unique innovator archetype. All of that is on the site. We've done some major stuff. I also think it's going to show you the direction and the vision that we have and where we're really putting a stake in the ground. So I'm super excited to let you in on it. Go check it out. Tell me what you think. All right. Browse, get innovative. Tamara out.
Thanks for hanging out with us inside Launch Street. When you're ready to take your game to the next level, join the thousands of others that are upping their innovation edge on GoToLaunchStreet.com, the top online education resource and community platform for innovators looking to use innovation to get measurable results. Go to LaunchStreet.com.